Hello everyone, this is Susie Q of Susie Q's Happy Little Haven, and welcome to my nursery room window. Today I have Heidi with me, and Heidi is the Heidi Sculpt by Karola Wegerich, and she was reborn by Ema Bennett. And she is a numbered sculpt, and she's number 9 of 555. And so I wanted to change her out of her winter outfit into a nice spring dress. And so let me go ahead and put her down so that I can show you the dress that we're going to be changing Heidi into today. And it's a dress that she came with. It's a Sarah Louise dress. And you probably have recognized this dress from one, that I put her in before. I really like the hem of this dress. It's sort of like a scarf style hem. It's got little bows on it, some lace. Just a really, really precious dress. I really, such a girly little dress. And then this is a little slip that's going to go underneath it. And you know how I like to put slips under my baby girls if I have one for them. And it's got a really interesting edging as well. And then she's got these little bloomers that are that go along with it. And her little patent leather Mary Janes with little bows in the front. And I wanted her just to be fancy today. I was just feeling like, dressing her fancy. And so these little socks, I'm going to put these little socks on her and these fancy little bows. And so let's go ahead and get started. So Heidi wanted me to make sure that we said hello to her cousin Jenny in the UK. So hi, cousin Jenny, and hi, Auntie Suzanne. Every time that I have Heidi on, she wants to make sure that she says hello to her cousin, and so we wanted to make sure we did that before we got started today. So I wanted to talk today about a topic that I've never talked about before. I know that you have, you've heard me speak about my mom all the time. I give little stories about my mom and things that she used to do with us and, things like that. But I've never spoken about my dad. And I do have a dad. Actually, I did have a dad. He passed away back in 1999. But I wanted to talk about my dad because he was a typical dad back in the early 50s and 60s. I was born in the early 50s, and that was during the time that the dads were not hands-on dads. My dad was a typical dad. He would, he would get up early in the morning, and my mom would fix him his breakfast. He would, and then he would go to work. And then he would come home from work, and while my mom was making our dinner, he would sit in the living room on the couch and he would read the newspaper. And we didn't have a lot of conversation with my dad. He was, well, I don't know if you would call him a quiet man. He just, I don't know. We just didn't have conversation with him. And so, but at the dinner table, my mom and my dad would talk about things that, happened during the day, and they would talk to each other and everything. But we never really, that I can recall, had conversation with my dad. But that's not to say he wasn't a good dad. He was a caring dad, that's for sure. My dad, he liked to work in the garage. That was his favorite thing to do on the weekends. He would work in the garage, doing carpentry things. He loved to work in wood. And to this day, I love to go to any type of, like a Lowe's or a Home Depot or a lumber yard or anything like that, just so that I can get the scent, the scent of wood. Because, that's what I grew up with. And so, but anyway, I remember him, one time I had started learning how to embroider. My mom was teaching me how to embroider, and I really loved embroidery. I was about, I think I was about 11 years old, 10 or 11, when my mom first started teaching me about embroidery. And so I told, I don't even know how the subject came up, but I needed to have some type of a box, a craft box that would hold my embroidery threads and my scissors and, my embroidery projects and the wooden hoops and all that stuff. And anyway, my dad ended up making me a box, I called it my embroidery box. And it was a big square box, and it had a shelf, a lift-out shelf on the top. So you open the box lid. It had a shelf or a tray that lifted out, and then underneath the tray is where I could put my, my big items like my embroidery hoops and my projects that I was working on. So it was really, really a neat wooden box. I just loved it. And he also put a clasp in the front to where I could lock it up. He gave me a little lock with a little key, and it was just really, really neat. But anyway, my mom, because there was 4 kids in our family, my mom always tried to make sure that everything was fair and square with all of us 4 kids. So she said, well, if you're gonna make me, make a box for her, you need to make a box for all the 3 other kids too. So anyway, needless to say, he was very busy in the garage for the next month, or however long it took him to make each one of us kids a box, a lock box. So, and we, let's see, I have 2 younger brothers and then an older sister. But each of us ended up with a nice lock box, and really the lock box came in handy. And the reason is because us brothers and sisters, some of them used to sneak into each other's things, and so it would cause fights and things amongst the siblings, and the lockbox stopped a lot of that, because we would put anything that we held precious that we didn't want anybody to get into, we would put it in our lockbox. So that really helped a lot. And we shared a room. My sister and I shared a room, and then my 2 brothers shared a room. And so that was part of the reason why it was hard for us to have our own personal private space. But the lockbox really helped that. But he did more than that, my dad. I can remember every time we would want to have a barbecue outside, we didn't have a regular barbecue. And so my dad took some bricks, and he stacked up some bricks, and like on either side, and then my mom brought out the it's the shelf from the stove inside the oven shelf. And so he propped that up on the bricks, and then put a couple of more bricks on either side just to hold it up. And he put some charcoal underneath and lit it on fire, and voila, there you have your barbecue. And I remember some really special times around that little barbecue. He made he made hamburgers, he made hot dogs, he used to put these little tiny white onions in the coals, right in the coals, and the coals would bake the onions. And I remember one time I tasted them, and I wasn't really fond of them, but my dad loved them. And I think my mom did too. She loved onions, so she probably had some too, is my guess. And then after, after we got done with dinner, the coals would be just perfect to roast marshmallows. And so I have such, fond memories about, that makeshift barbecue. So he did a lot of special things for us. And like I said, even though he was the type of dad that wasn't a dad that communicated with us very much at all, he provided for us. And, whatever my mom wanted to do, he would do for us and for her. So I think that he was your typical dad, excuse me, your typical dad back in those days. So I'm going to go ahead and put Heidi's little bloomers on her. And here we go. We're going to pull these up. She's a big girl. She's a tall girl. And so she's not so big, I guess. She's just kind of tall. But I love every bit of her. She's gonna look really cute in her little spring dress. I can't wait for the good weather to come. We're still getting rain and cold weather, but I'm bringing the spring inside, inside the house. So yeah, I remember another time that my dad, he used to go on fishing trips, and one time he came back, and he brought back a whole little nest of chipmunks, and they were hibernating chipmunks at the time, and I don't know the story behind how he got the chipmunks. Somehow he must have found them while they were sleeping during his his fishing expeditions, and so he decided he would bring them home, and he brought them home in this cage, and he had them all set up in the top there, in a nesting box. He made him a nesting box and made them all comfortable. And I remember him showing us kids the chipmunks, and we got to touch them, and they were sleeping, and I remember that they didn't wake up, because they were in such deep hibernation that they didn't wake up. I remember that there was about probably four of them. So anyway, that was a really special treat too. He also, from his fishing expeditions, he used to bring home fish, and which my mom would cook. But before she would cook them, my mom would take pictures of all of us kids holding the fish out in the backyard and stuff. So anyway, my dad was he was the quiet type of dad, but he still, he was part of our life. And then later on in life, he ended up, after he retired, he ended up wanting to continue on with his carving. He was also a wood carver. My grandpa, on my mom's side, had taught my dad how to carve animals and things out of wood, and so he just took to it right away, and he loved it. And so when he retired, he ended up, how he spent his time was carving. And he used to teach carving at a senior center. So anyway, yeah, he was a very interesting guy. So I just thought, I'm always talking about my mom, and I've never spoken about my dad, and my dad is worth mentioning too. But like I said, he passed away in 1999. What happened was, earlier in his life, when he was 55 years old, he had a heart attack, and he had a quadruple bypass. And so when, I guess it was, I'm trying to think, 13 years later, he had another heart attack, and they took him to the hospital, and they tried to, they tried to do a bypass, but the bypass didn't work. They couldn't get his heart started again, and so he actually died on the operating table. So, so that's, that was really a big surprise to our whole family, because of the fact that he had had successful surgery the first time, but I guess his veins were they weren't strong enough to carry the bypass. So anyway, but those are the good memories that I have of my dad, and I could probably think of more if I had more time on this on this video. But so I hope you enjoyed hearing about him, and the different things that he would do. He knew how to get everywhere. My mom, he was the driver in our family. My mom didn't know how to get anywhere. She didn't have a license. She was a stay-at-home mom. For many, many years, she was a stay-at-home mom. She ended up getting a career later on in life, but she was a stay-at-home mom for as long as us kids were, she was raising us kids. So anyway, so what do you think? Heidi is such a pretty little girl. I mean, she really is. I love this sculpt. I wanted to show you her hands because they are the most expressive hands. Look at that. I love those fingers on both hands. Very, very expressive. I love her, and her face is she's such a shy little girl. I just love this sculpt. So anyway, everyone, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed hearing about my dad, and enjoyed seeing Heidi getting her little Sarah Louise dress on. Today's Tuesday. It's going to be Taco Tuesday for us tonight. Hope you all are going to be having a wonderful day and evening tonight. Have a lovely rest of your week, and thanks for stopping by. And until we meet again, bye-bye.